The village that burned *, the village of Larth sat quiet under the red sky, as smoke curled from broken rooftops and ashes danced in the wind. Like ghosts from a forgotten battle, people walked slowly among the ruins with eyes full of fear and mouths that whispered only one word, the dragon. They said it came from the mountains. With wings wide as clouds and fire hotter than the sun, they said it burned homes, took animals, and vanished into the mist without a trace. No one dared speak its true name anymore except for one boy named Cale. Cale was only 12, but his eyes held something strange, something strong. He had no parents left. His mother had died when he was small, and his father never returned from the mountains. All Cale had was a necklace around his neck. It was silver and blue, and it pulsed like a soft heartbeat. The villagers said it was cursed, but Cale never believed them. He would often sit near the edge of the cursed forest staring into the shadows. He didn't feel fear like the others. He felt pulled toward it. At night he dreamed of fire, but it wasn't scary. It was warm and bright, like it was calling him. Each time he woke up, the necklace would glow brighter. The elder of the village stood tall with a long gray beard and cold eyes. He told stories of the dragon that ruined their peace. He said the beast was evil, and only pain would follow its path. Every month, they left an offering in the fields, hoping it would keep the monster away. Sometimes food, sometimes gold. Last month they left a goat tied to a post. It vanished by morning. One day Cale saw a group of men building a wooden cage. The elder said it was time to offer something more. They whispered about using a child this time. Cale's heart turned cold when he saw their eyes glance toward him. He ran into the forest with nothing but the clothes on his back and the glowing necklace on his chest. The trees were thick, and the air smelled of ash and moss. Strange sounds echoed all around. Birds did not sing here, only silence. But Cale walked forward with steady steps. His feet followed a path. Only he could see the light from his necklace guided him deeper. He came to a river, dark and still like glass. Across it stood a broken stone. It looked like an old statue, but only half remained. He stepped closer, and the necklace pulsed faster. He placed his hand on the stone, and suddenly the air around him began to hum. A deep sound rose from behind the trees, low and shaking the earth. Cale's breath caught in his throat. The roar came again, louder. This time leaves shook and a flock of blackbirds flew into the sky. Cale stood still. A shadow moved between the trees. It was huge, with scales that glowed faintly in the dark. Smoke curled from its mouth, but its eyes did not burn with anger. They looked tired, old, sad. The dragon stopped just 10 steps away and stared at him. Cale felt no fear. His necklace shone like a star, and the dragon's eyes widened. It spoke, but not with its mouth. The words filled Cale's head like wind in a cave. You were the mark, it said, the mark of peace. Cale dropped to his knees as the trees around him fell silent. The roar in the fog *, the forest was covered in a thick fog that touched the trees like slow-moving hands. Cale stood frozen where the dragon had stopped. His heart beat fast, but his feet did not move. The great beast stared at him without fire or rage, only quiet, only questions. Then it spoke again, but this time aloud. Its voice was deep and full of wind and age. You carry her light, it said. Cale could barely speak. He placed his hand on the necklace, and it was hot, not burning, just alive. The dragon lowered its head closer to Cale. Its breath smelled like smoke and leaves. It did not open its mouth wide like a monster. It only looked and waited, as if Cale held the answer to something ancient. You were the mark of Niran, the dragon said. Cale looked confused. I don't know what that is, he answered. The dragon's eyes closed slowly. She was one of the last humans who stood with us. Cale's heart jumped. That name was carved into the back of the necklace. Niran was his mother's name. Cale's mother had walked with dragons. The dragon sat down slowly like an old mountain. It did not roar, it did not fly, it simply spoke. It told Cale that many years ago dragons and humans had lived in peace. The necklace he wore was part of a bond, a sign of trust between both kinds. Only a few ever carried one, and they were called keepers of the flame. But then came the betrayal. The dragon's voice grew low, and bitter men had wanted more land, more gold, more power. They attacked dragons during the sleep of peace. They stole their eggs, they burned their nests, and they hunted the keepers who tried to stop the war. The flames of friendship turned into fire of war. Cale listened with wide eyes, his legs weak beneath him. The dragon's voice cracked when it said the last words. I was once a guardian of Niran, it said. She trusted me with her child. Cale blinked fast. That child was him. She knew the world was not ready, so she gave me the necklace and told me to watch from the shadows. The dragon's great wing moved as if in sorrow. Kale stood slowly, his voice small but strong. Why didn't you come back to protect the village? The dragon turned its head because fear had grown too deep. If I showed myself, they would only try to kill again. Kale thought of the elder. The way he stirred hate into the crowd, he now understood the lies. A sudden noise snapped through the trees, crunching leaves, a sharp whistle. Kale ducked. Behind the dragon, voices came through the fog. Look for the boy. He went into the woods. It was the elders, hunters, men with nets and spears and fire sticks. The dragon's body curled around Kale like a wall. Do not fear, the dragon said. I will not hurt them, but I will not let them take you. Kale nodded. He felt safe, not because the dragon was big, but because it didn't want to fight. It wanted peace, like his mother once did. The necklace glowed bright blue again. The hunters reached the clearing. They froze when they saw the beast. One man dropped his torch, another gasped, but none dared move. The dragon stood tall but silent. Kale stepped out from behind its wing. I came here on my own. He didn't take me. Kale shouted. He's not a monster. The hunters did not listen. They raised their weapons. The dragon still did not move. It only spread its wings and let out one roar, not of anger, but of sorrow. The sound rolled through the trees like thunder, and wind birds flew, leaves danced, and the hunters ran, their fear greater than their courage. Kale fell to his knees, tears in his eyes. The dragon folded its wings and lowered its head beside him. Now they will come in greater numbers, it said, but they will not find me here again. I must go deeper, to the old caves. Kale grabbed its claw. I'll come with you. The dragon paused. No, child, your place is among the humans. You must plant the seed of truth. Only through your voice can fear be broken. Kale closed his hand over the necklace. He nodded slowly. He now knew what he had to do. He had to return. He had to tell the truth of the dragon. The truth in scales. Kale returned to the village under a sky heavy with clouds. The necklace around his neck was still warm. His feet were muddy. His heart was loud. He had seen something no other villager had ever seen and lived to tell. But now, the real danger was not the dragon. It was the lies people had believed for years. Children played in the streets. Again, fires burned in the hearths, but fear still lived in every eye. Kale walked past the blacksmith, who looked away, past the baker, who stopped kneading his dough. Everyone had heard he ran into the woods. Everyone expected to find only his bones, but now he stood among them, alive and stronger. The village elder stepped out of the hall with his long robe dragging behind. His eyes were sharp and cold. He raised his voice for all to hear. Boy, where have you been? Kale raised his head high. In the forest, he said. I found the truth. Gasps spread like fire across the square. The elder walked closer. The truth. He repeated. What nonsense have you brought back? Kale looked at the people, then at the elder. Everything you said about the dragon is a lie. It's not a monster. It's not evil. He held up the necklace as it began to glow once more. This is the proof. Whispers grew louder. Some villagers stepped closer to see the light. Others backed away, as if cursed. The elder's face tightened. That thing is cursed. It brings danger. Kale shook his head. This necklace was given to my mother by the dragon. She was a keeper of peace. She trusted the dragon, and it trusted her. The elder moved fast and grabbed Kale's arm. You speak of forbidden things. The dragon burned our homes. Kale pulled free. It burned nothing. The fire came after your hunters attacked it. It defended itself. Wouldn't you do the same? Some villagers lowered their heads. Others looked at the elder with doubt. Kale told them the dragon's story, about the old peace, about the broken promise, about how humans betrayed dragons, about how his mother gave the dragon the necklace and her trust, and how that trust still lived in him. He told them the dragon had watched the village from afar, not to harm but to protect. For a long time no one spoke. Then an old woman stepped forward. I remember the name Niran. She helped heal my son with herbs no one else knew. She vanished after the mountain fires, but she was kind. She would never follow a monster. Kale nodded slowly. That's because she didn't. She followed the truth. The elder tried to speak again, but this time the crowd did not listen. Kale saw it in their faces. The change, the questioning fear was cracking. The elder's voice grew weak and small like smoke and wind. He turned and stormed back into the hall. Later that night, Kale sat alone near the fields. Stars blinked in the sky above. The necklace was quiet now, its glow faint. He thought of the dragon, of its words, its tired voice, its hope. He felt the weight of the task now resting on his shoulders. footsteps came behind him. It was Joran, a boy from the village. Only a few years older. He sat beside Kale and stared up. You really met at the dragon? Kale nodded. Joran looked at the necklace. I believe. You. What happens now? Kale looked at the stars. We tell more people. We speak the truth one by one. Until the fear breaks. Joran smiled. Maybe more will listen now. Kale felt a small hope rise in his chest. He wasn't alone anymore. The story had started moving forward. But deep in the woods, the dragon watched from a cliff. Its body still weak, its heart still wounded, but in its chest there burned a new light, a small but growing warmth. The boy had returned safely, and he had spoken the truth. The dragon let out a low breath into the sky like a quiet promise. Whispers of betrayal. The sun rose slow over the village of Larth. A thin fog hung over the rooftops, as if the forest itself was breathing into the town. Kale walked the streets with Joran at his side. People no longer turned away when they saw him. Some nodded, some whispered, a few even smiled, but he also saw fear in the eyes of the old. Fear of truth, fear of change. Inside the hall, the elders sat with men dressed in dark leather. They were not from the village. They carried sharp weapons and wore no smiles. They had come from the city, hired hunters who followed gold. The elder poured wine and leaned forward. The boy spreads lies. The dragon is alive. We must act before the village follows him. The lead hunter had a scar down his face and eyes like frozen stone. He did not speak much. He only nodded. The elder opened a map on the table. He hides somewhere in the forest. It's clever. It speaks like a man and uses tricks. Bring me its head and silence the boy. Gold coins clinked against the wood as payment was laid out like bait. That evening, Kale returned home to find his door open. The inside was a mess. His things thrown around. The necklace was still on his chest, but something in the air had changed. He stepped outside and saw a mark scratched into the door, a symbol of warning used by hunters. He had been marked. He ran to the river where he and Joran had often met. Joran was already there. His face pale. They came to my house to, he said. My father says the elders sent hunters into the woods. They're going after the dragon. Kel's chest tightened. He looked toward the mountains where clouds gathered like shields. He had to act fast. He couldn't let them hurt the dragon, not after all it had done, not after the truth he had seen. He grabbed the satchel and filled it with dried food. Joran handed him a short knife. Go, I'll watch the village. If anything happens, I'll send smoke from the tower. Kale nodded and ran toward the trees. The forest welcomed him with cold wind and broken branches, but the necklace glowed stronger. The deeper he went, the path felt familiar now, like it had been waiting for him. He moved fast, slipping past roots and shadows. The dragon's resting place was not far. He only hoped he would reach in time. Behind him, the hunters moved silent and careful. Their leader stepped over roots without a sound. His eyes scanned for tracks. One of the men held a weapon that hissed with a strange light. Another sniffed the air like a beast. They were trained not for war, but for killing things that should not be killed. Kale reached the edge of the old caves. Smoke drifted from the trees nearby. The dragon was awake. He stepped into the clearing, and the great head turned. You've come again, the dragon said. Kale spoke quickly. Hunters are coming. They plan to trap you. We must move now. The dragon rose slowly. Its wings stretched wide, but heavy with age. I will not run it, said I've hidden long enough. Kale shook his head. You don't have to fight, but you can't stay here. They don't care about truth. They care about power. The dragon paused, then lowered its head. Follow me, it said. Kale stepped close. As the dragon moved into the deepest part of the cave, they passed old stones marked with symbols. Drawings of humans and dragons together, faded, broken, forgotten. This place was once a home, the dragon whispered. Suddenly a sound echoed from the cave. Mouth. The hunters had arrived. Voices bounced off the stone. Orders, movement, a sharp click of metal. Kel's heart raced. The dragon turned. Its eyes glowed like slow fire. I will not harm them unless I must. Kale stepped out of the shadows. He raised his hand. Stop, he shouted. You don't understand what you're doing. The lead hunter stepped forward. Move, boy, this thing's head will hang from your elder's wall. Kale stood firm. The elder lied to you. He lied to all of us. The hunters moved and Kale backed up. Then something strange happened. The necklace burned like ice. A beam of blue light shot into the air. The ground shook. The hunters froze. Even the dragon looked surprised. Then a voice filled the cave. Not Kel's, not the dragon's, but a woman's. Niren's blood has returned. The pact lives again. The light faded, silence fell. Kale looked down. The necklace no longer glowed. But every hunter had dropped their weapons, eyes wide, mouths open. Something had changed. When fire falls, smoke curled above the cave as the sun vanished behind dark clouds. The hunters stepped back in silence. None of them could explain the voice they heard. None of them could move. After the necklace glowed like a star, Kale stood still. With his arms shaking, he didn't understand what had happened. But he knew the voice belonged to his mother, and somehow the dragon heard it too. The lead hunter raised a shaking hand and pointed at the dragon. "I don't care what magic you use. This ends now." He pulled a strange rod from his back. It hissed and crackled with light. Kale jumped in front of the dragon. "No, you saw it. You heard the truth. This dragon is not the enemy." The hunter's face twisted in anger. "We don't take orders from children." He fired the weapon. The beam of heat missed Kale's shoulder by inches. It struck the wall behind and left a deep black mark. Kale fell to the ground. The dragon rose like a storm, its wings stretched wide and blocked the light from the cave mouth. The wind changed. The air turned heavy. A sound rumbled from the dragon's chest, low and deep. The cave trembled. Rocks fell from above. The hunters shouted and scrambled back, but the dragon did not strike. It only roared. One loud cry that shook the forest and echoed through the valley. Fire rose around its body, but it held it back. Kale stood again with tears in his eyes. "You don't have to fight," he said. The dragon looked down at him. "I won't, but they must see who we really are." The dragon turned to the hunters. "I offer no harm, but if harm is brought to me, I will defend the last piece that remains." Its voice was not cruel. It was ancient, full of grief. The hunters dropped their weapons. One by one except the leader. He stepped forward with rage in his eyes. "Lies, all of it. Dragons only know war. I will end this now." He rushed forward, but Kale moved faster. He stepped between them with the necklace held high. Light burst from it once again, but this time it did not rise. It spread across the ground. Like water, symbols glowed beneath their feet, old marks from long before. The ground lit up with blue rings. The dragon gasped softly. The packed ground, it whispered. The lead hunter froze. His foot caught in the glowing ring. The light burned into his boots and made him fall back. Kale heard a sound in the distance. Voices. The villagers were coming. Torches lit the path behind them. At their front was Jorn. He waved toward Kale. They followed the smoke. They saw the signal. The villagers entered the clearing, their eyes wide as they saw the dragon, but none screamed, none ran. Kale stood on the glowing symbol and raised his voice. "You were lied to. The dragon was never the threat. The real enemy is fear." He pointed at the hunter leader and those who feed it. The elder appeared from the back of the crowd, his face pale. He tried to speak, but the villagers surrounded him. They asked questions. They wanted answers. Some were angry, some were ashamed. Kale stepped down from the symbol. He walked toward the elder slowly. "You told us dragons killed our people, but it was you who called the hunters. It was you who burned the first nest. My mother was a keeper. You called her a traitor, but she tried to save us." The elder said nothing. His mouth trembled. Then he turned and walked away alone. The dragon lowered its head to Kale. "You did what I could not. You brought the truth." Kale smiled and placed a hand on its warm scale. "You trusted me. Now they do." To the villagers stepped forward one by one, not with weapons, but with open hands. The packed ground pulsed one final time. The symbols faded into the soil. The forest grew quiet. The dragon stepped into the trees and turned its head. "I will go to the high cliffs. From there I will watch. I will guide when needed. But now this world belongs to you again." Kale watched it disappear into the fog. He held the necklace close. The people around him did not cheer. They stood in peace for the first time in years. No fire, no screams, only understanding, only light. And the wind whispered something that sounded like hope. The pact renewed. The village of Larth was no longer quiet with fear. It was quiet with thought. The fires still burned, but they were no longer used to chase away dragons. They were used to cook meals, to bring people together. Children gathered in circles as old stories were retold, but this time Kale was the one telling them. Not to scare, but to teach. He stood in the village square, with the necklace glowing softly round his neck. People listened with open hearts. They asked questions. They brought flowers to the cave where the dragon once rested, not as offerings of fear, but as gifts of thanks. The stones around the cave entrance were now marked with drawings of wings and fire, not to warn, but to honor. Jorn helped Kale draw the symbols. They used blue paint mixed with mountain dust, the same color as the packed ground light. They drew the story of the dragon and of Kale and of the woman named Niren, who had once given her heart to peace and her son to truth. The drawings covered every rock like history brought back to life. Inside the village hall the elders' chair sat empty. No one removed it. They left it there to remind themselves of what fear could become, of what lies could build, but also of what one voice could break. Kale never stepped inside the hall again. His place was outside with the people. One day a group of travelers arrived, not from the city, but from distant villages that had heard strange tales. They came to see the boy with the glowing necklace, to ask about the dragon. Kale sat with them under the tree by the river and told them everything. Not just the truth, but the feeling of standing before a creature of fire and choosing not to run. The travelers took the story home, and others followed. More came, more listened. The drawings spread, the story grew, and the name of Niren was no longer a whisper. It became a song, soft, hopeful, real. Far above the mountains the dragon watched from a cliff. Its wings folded, its eyes gentle. It saw the torches, not as weapons, but as lights of a new beginning. The forest below had changed. No more traps, no more fear, only peace. The dragon finally closed its eyes in rest. Kale was older now, his voice deeper, but his eyes were still filled with wonder. He trained young ones to read the ancient symbols, to walk the packed ground with care, to speak truth without shaking. They called him Keeper Kale, but he never liked the title. He always said he was just a boy who listened. The necklace never stopped glowing. Even after all those years its light changed colors, sometimes blue, sometimes white. Once it turned golden. That was the day a small dragon hatchling landed near the village well. Lost, shaking, hungry, Kale knelt down and offered his hand. The hatchling touched the necklace with its nose and purred. That night the villagers danced under the stars. The children played with the dragon. It followed Kale everywhere. They named it Ember. It slept curled beside the river while Kale told stories, and no one feared the fire anymore. One evening Jorn joined Kale on the hill. They looked out at the homes glowing like stars below. You remember how it started? Jorn asked. Kale smiled. The burning, the fear, yes, but I also remember the roar that shook the earth, not to destroy, but to wake us up. Jorn placed a hand on Kale's shoulder. We did good, didn't we? Kale looked at the stars. I think we did more than good. We broke the curse of silence. They both sat there until the sky turned black and the stars blinked above them like a dragon's eyes, watching from beyond the clouds. When the wind blew that night, it carried more than air. It carried memory, it carried truth, and somewhere far away on a cliff of stone and time, an old dragon smiled into the sky, not because it had won, but because a boy had finally remembered what others forgot, the meaning of peace. The boy who tamed the sky. The morning sky broke open with soft golden light. Birds flew in wide circles over the hills. The village of Larth was quiet, but full of life. Fields swayed with crops. Laughter echoed from the schoolhouse, and above it all flew Ember, the young dragon with red wings and curious eyes. He flew not to scare, but to play. He was no longer the only one. Other dragons had started to appear. One from the east with silver horns, one from the cliffs with wings like black sails. They came not with fire, but with caution. They came to watch, to see if what the winds carried was true. A human boy who spoke with flame and heart. A village that welcomed dragons. Kale stood by the edge of the hill where wind met stone. The necklace around his neck shimmered with a soft green glow. His hands rested on the same rock where he had once faced fear. Now it stood as a marker of change, not a grave, but a memory behind him. Children drew more symbols on the stones, new ones they had made together. Stories were no longer told in secret whispers. They were sung in songs, painted on wood, carved into doors. The legend of Niren, and the dragon, the boy, and the pack, the light in the cave, and the roar that was not war, but warning. All became part of the world again. The pact had returned, not through battle, not through armies, but through one voice, one boy who listened, one dragon who trusted. Kale was not king, not warrior. He was a keeper, and that title was now given to many. Young ones wore simple necklaces of wood and blue glass, not magic, but meaning. They learned the old ways, how to read the sky, how to speak with calm, how to protect what was once feared. The keepers stood at the border of the forest, not as guards, but as guides. Ember often landed beside Kale with a thump and a playful growl. He had grown larger now, almost the size of a house, but he still nuzzled Kale's shoulder like the small hatchling. He once was together they walked the forest paths visiting old stones, finding hidden messages carved by dragons long gone. Each one a whisper of the past returned. One day a traveler arrived on a winged glider. From the distant city she wore white robes and carried scrolls. She asked for Kale she had heard. The story she had read the winds, and now the city wanted to learn to open the old halls again, to rewrite what they had erased. Kale welcomed her with quiet words and a kind smile. He did not stand tall, he did not speak with power, he simply showed her the truth. He led her to the caves, to the packed ground, to the drawings made by children, and to Ember who bowed with fire in his breath and peace in his eyes. The city changed after that. Not all at once, but enough. The scrolls were copied, the drawings were shared, other villages followed, new keepers were trained. The sky no longer belonged to fear, it belonged to flight, to freedom. Years passed, Kale grew older. His hair turned silver like frost on stone, but his eyes stayed the same. He sat by the same river with Ember curled beside him and told the same story, to new ears, to new hearts. And the fire inside never faded. One evening the sky opened with storm clouds and streaks of light. The wind howled like a song from long ago. Kale stood once more at the top of the hill. Ember stood beside him. Other dragons joined together. They looked at the horizon where the sky met the stars, where the world still waited. Kale raised the necklace and placed it on a new stone. He stepped back. "I've done my part," he said. "The rest belongs to them now." The children of the keepers stood in a circle watching, listening, learning, ready to carry the fire. The wind lifted the necklace. It rose into the air with the breath of the dragons. It shined once more brighter than ever, then it vanished like dust in sunlight. But its warmth remained in the hearts of those who would follow, in the sky above Larth, in the silence between the stars. And so the boy who once walked into the forest alone returned with the truth, taught with kindness, protected with peace, and gave the world back its voice, not with a sword, but with a story. He did not tame the dragon. He tamed the sky. The end.